Hello everybody, Chrystal Kubis here, tuning in with Fireheart Global. As you know, we're working on a big project. Our mission is to be inspiring you to ignite passion, shed fear, and step into your power. Today I'm very, very, very excited to bring to you someone super special. Someone who I just had the opportunity to meet, I don't know, how many weeks ago? 3?
I have no concept of time.
Alright, well, let me tell you the story of how we met before I even introduce you to him here. So, a few weeks ago was my birthday, and I was throwing a surprise party. And for those of you who've watched some of my videos before, you know that I love music and friends and people and connection, and I got all of it. So, I walked into a house, opened the door, to a private home, by the way, and there was a live blues band playing, and my heart just like dropped open and exploded. And this man leading the show here, Mr. Howson, and I became instant friends. So I bring him to you today to not only introduce you to him, but because I know he's going to be an inspirational force for many of you out there. So without further ado, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So to give you all a little bit of background on who exactly this man is, I figured I would just do what we do best, talk.
Let's rap a while.
Let's rap a while. Many of you are out there often working on things, moving through life the best you can. So I figured, why not bring you someone that would, I don't know, RJ was telling me his story, and I felt like you need to meet him. So without further, I don't know, let's get into it. So RJ, started to ask you about your background and your upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I heard you play, I knew that you were much more than a musician. And upon a little digging, I wanted you to tell them a little bit about what you were telling me. So we'll start here. You grew up with 2 parents,
Yeah.
Obviously.
I was blessed to
right?
have 2 parents. Yeah.
Right? But you grew up with a military background, correct?
Yes.
And a church background.
Yes.
Yes? Could you expound upon that a little bit more?
Well, my dad was in the Army, and we moved all over the world. We lived in the Middle East. I was born in Germany. It was great because I got to experience a lot of different cultures and a lot of different things. One of the side effects of that is that the family was the only thing that really was constant. Everything else was always shifting around us, whether it was geography or culture or any number of things. We always knew the family was really going to be the only thing that was the center, so it forced us to be family-centric,
Okay.
which was actually kind of cool. And my mom is like super spiritual person. She is somebody that everybody comes to my mom, you know, when they need prayers or anything, you know, like it doesn't have to be family members either, like any number of people. Like my mom's just she's kind of like a healer, really.
Okay.
But a natural, you know, she's not, she was brought up in the Christian faith, so most of her experience is based in that, as well as my own, you know, so I've had a lot of other experiences, but that's...
Now you were telling me something your mom said, or you said to your mom about, you play this and I'll play that.
Yeah.
What was it you said?
Well, I experienced a lot of crazy stuff in churches as a kid, you know, being around my aunt and my mother and sitting there, I can remember in the pew, and they're both speaking in tongues.
Okay.
You know, and the whole church is going wild, and the energy is incredible, and you're just like, wow, I don't know what this is, but it's amazing.
Okay.
You know, and you kind of knew what it was. It was source, whatever you want to call. You don't need to, I'm not one of those people that believes there's only one way. You know,
Yeah, me neither.
it's multiple interpretations of the same story or the same material, let's say. You know what's true and what's not true. So she would say, well, you know, you could speak in tongues too. And I'd be like, you speak in tongues, I'll speak in strings.
So you've always loved music then?
Ever since I was little, I knew that music was really critical to me, you know, like I had musicians in the family. My dad was my first like musical hero, so.
Would you remember seeing him play as a little boy? What was that like?
Oh man, like there was one time in particular that just sticks with me. It was at a college and it was outdoor, and I was probably like 5 years old, and there was just a huge amount of people, and my mom kind of brought us up to the front of the stage so we could see him real close, you know. And I remember getting up and just looking up and just going, it looked like King Kong on the Empire State Building, and I couldn't believe it. Like, that is incredible. The energy that was coming off and the way that people were responding, it really had a big impression on me, like the power of music. And it was just this unifying power, you know, like everybody gets in sync. You know, later on, you read studies about, you know, when people experience music as a group, their brainwaves sync up, you know. Yeah, so it's pretty fascinating.
Wow. Now, you didn't always, I mean, you were interested in music from the beginning, but what you were telling me before is that you didn't always, music hasn't been your full-time gig. I mean, you started off in, what was it, robotics or magnetics?
Yeah, I started off like in engineering, the field of engineering and technology, specifically magnetics.
Okay.
It's interesting because like I've always been one of these people that music is very important to me. I know it's the primary vehicle for me to express myself and to help other people.
Right.
But the main thing for me and the way I was brought up was always like service to others, you know. Now that's a blessing and a curse because you can go too far with it and then not take care of your own self, you know, because I think in the West we're taught that selfishness is bad. And it's actually really important to be self-centered, you know, heart-centered.
Right.
Know yourself, know your center. You know, heart-centered is different than self-centered. You know, the terminology, you can get into these, one's ego-driven and one's driven by the heart. So
I know we do a lot of talking in some of the videos I put out about really listening to that spiritual heart, that internal guidance system that's, you know, inside of you. You know, we haven't really been taught to honor that. But one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show today was that you're living it. You're a living example of it. But now, when you were working in the robotics field, you weren't always heart driven. You were telling me, tell me about a moment that was more like the switch. Was there a switch for you somewhere?
Well, I had convinced myself that I could go into that field and be in it and help people that way, through technology, through inventions, through any number of things. I was thinking, and I also played music at night, you know, so I was doing music at night, sometimes in the church. I was in a 9-man gospel group that toured churches for a period of time.
Wow, okay.
I did a lot of different things with music in addition to having my day job. But I just had a series of experiences where I, you know, whether it was magnetics that was used in defense, which is weird because I was an army brat, but I don't really believe in war and violence. So it created this turmoil internally. And I knew that it wasn't right, but I also was thinking about my paycheck and my bills, you know, so, and then later on I got into biotech, which is more pharmaceutical industry, the chemical industry, all these things. As a result of that, I worked for Monsanto, Pfizer, all these different companies.
Oh, okay.
The belly of the beast, you know, so it was kind of intense. Did the Human Genome Project, I was part of that, the mapping of the human gene. And the way that it was sold to us was a certain way, and the way that it gets used is another way, you know. So I just like a series of like events where I was just like, this isn't me. This isn't what I want to be doing. I woke up and just realized what's driving me when I wake up. What's the force that's driving me every day? Is it I've got a job? I've got bills to pay? Is it something to do with fear, which is money, greed, all those things? Or is it heart-centered? The weird thing about living a heart-centered life, I've found, it's not always easy.
Definitely not.
You know, sometimes it can be more difficult. Some friends of mine, like, we'll jokingly say enlightenment's a bitch. Because you get awakened, you know, like, there's a lot of, you got work to do.
I call it a responsibility.
It's a responsibility,
most definitely.
yeah. Where were we going with that?
Well, you're talking about working in biotech and all this, and just in terms of where was that moment? You know, because I know that there's a lot of people out there that want to. They know a change or a shift has to happen in their lives. They can feel it, but the way that they've built their lives, they don't even. It's terrifying to make that kind of shift. And you went through quite a big transition, a couple of them, in order to get where you are today with all of this.
Very much so.
And so, what was that like? What was that shift? What was going on in your life, or what? How did you have the courage to kind of change direction? Would be the question.
I think it's this thing that is internal to all people, where we know our own truth. Whether or not we listen to it is another story, but we know. And even if we're not paying attention to it, we'll get these little glimpses into it, like it's driving by in a car and you see it over there, like, oh, there's my truth. I'm not living it, but there it is. And I would have those moments in life, you know, where you're just like, it's there, but how do I get to it? And I, you know, there was a lot of fear there, because, like, we're socially programmed to be consumers and to be these cogs in a wheel and part of the corporate system and all that stuff. And you know, after seeing the greed enough times and realizing that many things weren't driven from the heart that I was involved with, I would feel like I was doing it for the good, but I didn't feel like the overall corporations and stuff were. And still don't. But I realized I needed to make a change. I couldn't do it anymore. I had completely lost my will to do it.
Okay.
And I was making six figures. So,
right, which is up until now isn't a lot of people's dream to get to, right?
I was living whatever the American dream is, you know, the home. You know, I ended up going through a divorce as a result of this awakening, and ended up moving to Chicago.
Okay. Now we're gonna pause right here, because Chicago is my hometown too. So high five Chicago. All right. Well, what was your time like there?
Chicago was like a complete rebirth for me. It was, you know, you have these times in your life where you really get connected back to yourself, and I think everybody goes through those to some extent, I hope. But it really was just slapping me in the face, like, hey dude, this is who you are, bam, you know? And I didn't even really have the courage to really do it. I was fighting it. Even though I knew it was what I had to do, I was fighting it. Like, and it was twisting me up inside. I just couldn't hardly deal with it. And really it was the old blues guys. You know, I played in the Chicago blues circuit and was blessed to share the stage with Buddy Guy, for example, which was a dream that I had realized, you know, I dreamed about it for years, and then it happened in his club multiple times, you know. When he's off the road, he'll come into his club and you're just like, wow, that's, you know.
Right.
And those kind of affirmations and like meeting a lot of my heroes, and a lot of, Chicago's an international city, so all the musicians are going through there, and cultural figures, and it's incredible the number of people you can meet, kind of like New York, you know. So there just was a lot of inspiration. I mean,
so you were playing music, and then you're wanting to make this big shift in your life. You go to Chicago, and
the other musicians said, "Come on."
The older guys.
Yeah. You're qualified. Come on.
They pulled you.
We want to hire you into our company.
Pulled you through the tunnel.
Yeah.
No, look.
And they also knew when to kick me out of the nest, which is a beautiful thing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I accepted all that, you know.
And then that brings us to you're here.
Yeah.
And wow, doing all kinds of cool stuff.
I've been having a blast in Florida.
To hear this man play, if you are out there and have not heard him play yet, please make it. Please come to Florida and party with us. Sure. Or find out where he's at on the road here, and we'll be sorry for sure. But I found that listening to you play on my birthday, it wasn't just, I love the blues. I know you play all different kinds of music, but I love the blues, and I was listening to you play and really going, this guy's got something else going on here.
Yeah.
And when we were in deeper conversation, finding out it's not just music to you, which to a lot of full-time musicians, it's not just music, but to you, you got a whole other world going on when you play and your viewpoint on it. I think you referenced it like music, and big word for you is frequency. Frequency, right? So tell me a little bit about what that word means and how you relate that. You were saying you attune your guitars to. Just tell me what you do.
Guitar, I've come up with all kind of alternate tunings. This particular tuning right here is a tuning that was inspired by a mockingbird. This mockingbird would come to this tree that was right by my bedroom window for 3 years when I lived in Bradenton Beach, and it would literally was there almost every day. And some people, it might have driven them nuts to be woken up by a mockingbird every day because it was really clear, it was right there. But I'm such a deep sleeper, it was almost I would stay in the kind of like subconscious level, and this bird would just be feeding me all this information. It would go out, travel around, get all these different musical.
Because a mockingbird does a mockingbird mimic sounds?
It mimics other sounds, other birds' calls.
So it's like a collector?
It was a collector. You run through all these different bird calls, and could be car alarms, could be any number of things. But like, I accepted it all as musical information, and that bird was a teacher to me. It sounds nutty, but I've heard other musicians say, if you really want to learn music, you got to learn to listen.
Absolutely.
And you absolutely have to learn to listen to nature, because the primary notes of music come out of nature.
Right.
These are frequencies that are occurring in the whole universe, which is kind of fascinating. There's actually stuff they've measured. This is what a lot of communication technology is based off of, whether it's radio or cell phones or anything that's wireless in the air is based off of knowledge of frequency.
So then again, we get to see how that upbringing of yours really brings this culmination of understanding to this.
Yeah.
Talking to you, I was amazed by not only the vocabulary, but the understanding and the depth of what's going on when you're playing. How is it interacting not only with the audience, but what are you doing? So there's a lot of my listeners out there who are very much in tune with vibration, with the way that our consciousness of the planet is shifting. I think you're an incredible inspiration, at least to me, in blending worlds that a lot of people aren't yet, or they're not conscious that they're doing it. Could you speak a little bit more about, like, what are you doing when you're playing?
Well, I would say one of my big inspirations down here has been Dickie Betts. He was a guitar player for the Allman Brothers, and one of the things that he says, he's kind of like a mentor to me, and somebody I consider to be a huge inspiration right now. He says, if you're thinking about playing guitar, you're not playing guitar. And so it goes back to that thing where you want to transcend all the technical parts of it. It's literally, you want to get to the place where you're like driving a car. Yeah. But I kind of look at it, it's driving a car, but it's driving a really cool sports car late at night on a curvy road. You're on a curvy road, and the headlights only let you see so far out.
Okay.
And because of that, your focus is right there in the moment.
Okay.
So you take your focus and your intention, you put it right in the moment. You tune to the room or tune to the source, and then the music kind of like plays you. You're the instrument,
So would some people try to get to that supreme presence, like present moment awareness on a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now when you were at my house playing, right? What I noticed is you were playing, but it seemed like you were tuning into the audience as well, but changing that. Does that shape how you play, or how does that work?
Yeah, I would say it definitely does. I'm very sensitive to that. I'm very empathetic. almost too much sometimes.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, one really quick story that kind of really changed my perspective, and it was like an epiphany moment. I went to a show, and Richie Havens, the guy that opened Woodstock, was going to be doing a benefit for the Dalai Lama's brother. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. I'm going to get to meet this guy and see this guy. And the Dalai Lama's brother is going to be there. And I thought, wow, this is going to be an amazing experience. I go there. It's in southern Indiana, and Bloomington is actually where it was. And a beautiful setting. And everybody sits on the floor. And Richie gets up there. And he takes like 15 or 20 minutes to tune his guitar. And for me, being a teenager at the time, I was just like, wow, is he ever going to get this thing in tune? Like, it was driving me a little nutty, you know, especially being somebody that was such a listener and listening what I thought was really deep at the time. I thought I was a deep listener. But he was about to teach me that I wasn't listening deep enough. Because what he said right before he started was, birds outside.
I hear them, yeah.
He said, I'm sorry it took me so long to tune, but I have to tune to the room. And when he said those words, my brain just exploded. Because to me, it was just like a reverence for what he was doing. It wasn't just music, it wasn't a performance, and it wasn't him just expressing himself. And I would say, you know, I experienced that a lot in the church growing up too. You know, and also with the old blues guys, because the old blues guys, gospel, blues, country is all fairly similar stuff. It's traditional, you know, roots music of the United States, jazz, all that stuff. But some of the guys I played with in Chicago, they laid it on the line every time. There was no, it was like barroom preacher pretty much. And I approach it that way too. Every time you have a chance to play, it's like an opportunity to help people. You can hit certain things in the music that really releases something in somebody, you know.
Tell me a little bit more about that. What do you mean help? I hear what you're saying, but there's some people that I don't think they'd understand what you mean by that. They may have that feeling but haven't tied it together.
Well, there's different ways to look at it. You can look at it from a spiritual standpoint, because I do believe music is a spiritual path and a spiritual tool. You can look at it from a metaphysical standpoint, or you can look at it from a scientific standpoint.
All right. You have my attention here.
I'd say if you're going to look at it from a scientific standpoint, you know, I think a lot of people know about the spiritual and the metaphysical. But it's interesting because there's this convergence that's going on right now between science and spirituality, or, you know, things of the heart, let's say. There's this thing called heart math, which is an institute that's existed for like 15, 20 years. And what they do is they measure the magnetic field of the heart. Right. You know, and I was getting into that in magnetics when I was in magnetics. And some of these experiences have revealed to me that I've really been a lifelong student of frequency and vibration and energy. Right. Sound's just another form of energy. Okay. So some of the ways I look at what I'm doing is almost like sound energy healing. You know, but I do it in a very intuitive way. I found that if you go in there and you try to just force it down people's throat, it doesn't work. Right. I mean, you're very incognito about it, I'd say, because you're known all over town or all over the world as this amazing musician. But I don't think people are understanding that this is another layer and level to what you actually are doing. You know, they may feel good and really enjoy listening to your music, but this is another layer as to why. And that's just like this is important for me to let people know that, you know. It's like it's because everything's interconnected. We know that, right? When you're a musician, I see it in the work I do all the time, you know. And it's just like we need to really understand how we're moving, how things are affecting us, and that give and receive on everything. I think as time goes forward here, there's an interesting time where a lot of this stuff is going to be more validated through science. Right. A lot of the healing arts have been around for a really long time. I mean, chakras and chi, and these are thousands of years old. The scales that I play or anybody plays in Western music are thousands of years old.
Right. I like the science and spirituality bridge that's happening, because
Yeah,
it isn't like you're on this side or this side. It's like we're merging them together in a way that they can coexist easily because they already do.
What's that documentary, What the Bleep Do We Know?
Right?
They say we're only perceiving 4% of what's there. That's astounding. The rest of it's some kind of energy we don't quite understand.
I remember it was about 11 years ago working at the Omega Institute and having the opportunity to host all of the teachers from that movie.
Yeah.
And getting them all in the room, it was a very foreign concept then, to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But to see how far we've come, I think is very exciting. It's very exciting.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad a lot of it's in, getting into the mainstream and people are recognizing.
Me too. I'd like to kind of redirect this, if it's okay with you. You mentioned very empathy.
Yeah.
Now I have a lot of young viewers and a lot of older viewers out there that have. We're all sensitive in our own way.
Mm-hmm.
Some have buried it, and some are. It overwhelms their systems because they don't know what to do with it. So there's some people. In you being sensitive in yourself, how have you learned to work with your own sensitivities that are now to your advantage?
Well, I have my days,
Right, me too.
But I would say overall, knowing my center and daily meditation.
Okay.
Meditation helps me
Now, is
tremendously.
music your meditation, or is it a different?
I think all of life is a meditation, really.
Okay.
But if I'm at home and this is a guitar that I like to play around the house a lot, so it's kind of like, it's my little healing process for myself, this guitar. So I do that, I play music, but I also meditate, just like, go into a meditative state and meditate, for however long I feel like I need to do it. And to me, meditation is the calming of the mind and going into your quiet spot. You're like you're almost in a quiet chamber in your mind, sitting.
Yeah.
And you're outside of your body, really. And you really would get all the information you need if you quiet yourself to that point.
Right.
You'll get the answer to anything that you're trying to find the answer to. Because then your subconscious, which pretty much knows your truth, is going to tell you, this is what you need to do.
Laying it down. You're laying it down for us here. That's good. It's good.
That's old stuff, I was inspired to meditate, I wasn't brought up with meditation. I was brought up with prayer, and I would say prayerful, meditative prayer, and being in tune with Source.
Right.
But I wasn't brought up knowing how to meditate. I had to, be inspired by a few people to make that change come about. And I realized, I did yoga first. So I actually did yoga before. It was during yoga I realized I've been meditating my whole life. I just didn't know what it was,
Got it, yeah.
Whether it was walking through nature.
Right.
Creating
art. For anything, cooking, it's a lot for everybody. It's different, right? And I think that's a cool topic to touch on, because where you have had some of the upbringing of having two parents that really fostered and were able to bring in key elements to who you are. There's a lot of my listeners out there who have children, who have or are still working through their own childhood issues, or are surrounded by a lot of kids, and I always like to bring the awareness of what do we do with this next rising generation, especially people that are creative visionaries, much like yourself, or parents that see their kids with different sensitivities but don't even know how to acknowledge them as sensitivities, and they don't know what's wrong with their kids. What are your thoughts? I mean, you were creative, you're in tune, did you mention before that you were building radios at like 8 years old?
Yeah, I built my first radio at like 8 years old.
Right. What would you say to parents out there?
Well, it's interesting you brought up the radio, because what I would say is the heart itself is a radio.
Huh. Beautiful.
That you can take and tune to whatever you want. But many times the heart gets tuned by somebody else because we allow it through social programming or parental programming sometimes. You know, you have to undo certain things and then appreciate things that work for you. Not everything, you got to know your truth. You got to quiet yourself to the point where you know your truth. And I would say, like, it's always good for parents to try to foster that in their kids, to listen to their kids closely enough. To me, like, the greatest asset I have as a musician is listening skills. And it's not here. It's listening from the vibratory heart level, which is more like the way an animal has intuition, animal instinct. And it took me a while to figure those things out. You know, there was a book I read called The Listening Book that helped me a lot. And it's for non-musicians too. That's a great book. I would say Autobiography of a Yogi really helped me a lot too.
Okay.
And some of the experiences I had connected to Paramahansa Yogananda,
Right.
who's a pretty incredible historical figure. You know, he's a real guy.
You were just like this kaleidoscope we could talk to all day.
Yeah,
I love it.
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of.
We'll have part 2 coming up soon here. So
Yeah.
you know, I really love what you're saying about you really listening from the heart, because I find that that's exactly how I'm doing my work too. And that's how people seem to be being called to move now, right?
One's joy, one's fear. I think it's like, for me, the way that I kind of view things is logic is ego. I'm not saying that's bad or good. None of this is bad or good. This is just the way I kind of look at things. Logic is ego. Emotions are like static on the channel. And sometimes that's an indicator you gotta tune things a little different.
Right.
There's too much static, you know. Intuition is actually the pure channel. Channels, I'm thinking channel as far as like a TV station or a radio station. You know, you tune your heart to whatever you want. But I'm trying to get, you know, as I grow in these ways and things, I'm trying to get to where I'm not driving myself off of fears.
Right.
Which is the opposite of heart-based, I would say.
Tremendous courage it takes, especially in these times right now. Everything is
Focus
just
to some level
changing,
too. You know, I mean, I think one of the things that's going on is just a massive overstimulation.
Right. When I was asking about empathy, one thing correct me if I'm wrong here, but by having a channel, the meditation is one, but having a channel of music or having an art form or something that you're practicing often kind of brings that energy in and like works with it better, right? I mean, there's a lot of people feeling very scattered, you know, the million to-dos right now, and I always encourage my listeners to tune in and figure out what are they passionate about? How do we ignite it? You know, and then how do we shed the fear behind it that says, well, I can't because I don't have time. This isn't going to work, where that logic kicks in. You know, logic has served us to a point, but then there's a point where it doesn't, right? Yes. So how do we tap in to go, I'm going to shed this fear, because when I ignite that passion, then I can stand in what I'm here to do. Yeah. And I can stand in and connect, and I can be connected to nature, and I can be connected to myself and to each other, and then, you know, and globally.
I think nature is really important, when you just said nature. Because nature, this is crazy, but this is science. Everything that's green on the planet is vibrating with the same frequency. Everything that's green.
Really?
And that frequency comes from the sun.
Huh.
Photosynthesis.
Okay.
That's kind of crazy stuff. I mean, if you think about it, like, so you're telling me nature's vibrating at source? What else would the sun be? The sun to me is almost, the ancients worshiped the sun. It would make sense. It's a big fireball in the sky, but it was deeper than that. It actually is putting off the frequency that sets the time of all the planets moving around, the way they're spinning. There's many things that are vibrating off of natural things that are occurring in the universe.
Right.
You know, and that's scientifically measurable. These are things they measure all the time. So that's something to be aware of. It's all frequency, it's all vibration, and tune to the things that are your truth.
Tune to the things that are your truth.
Yeah.
I think that this is a perfect closing point for us. Tune to the things that are your truth. It's fantastic. So, wow, we could talk all day. I'd love to have you back. I know that my listeners are gonna probably have questions for you or want to know more. But if people, well, here's the last question: What is it that's sitting now? Like if you could speak to the people out there listening, something that is your truth. What would you say to them, giving you the opportunity to do that?
Well, I believe that everyone has their own truth, and to not judge so harshly of others. Seems to be a lot of that going on lately. And kind of like try to pull back and focus on you. I mean, are you perfect? Do you really know what you're doing? Do you know where you're going? What's driving you? What's driving you? Is money driving you? Or is your heart driving you? And you can have money and still be heart driven.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
And the interesting thing is, like, when you really start to tune into the heart, things work out. Things work out. Every time I think, oh, I can't do this anymore, I can't do that, window opens, door opens.
Right.
A new person pops into my life, whatever it is. You never know what it's going to be, but you have to be open to it. You have to be aware that you can't go through life like this. This is the only way it can go. Even for me, knowing that I was born a musician and heard music and understood music from birth, if I had to give up music, I would be cool with that. Because to me, the connection to source is more important than music.
Wow. It's like...
Well, yeah.
No, I hear you loud and clear. Thank you. Thank you.
Cool.
It has been not only an incredible honor to have you here, but to have you speak to many people out there. I know this is going to affect a lot, many. So
I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time and your wisdom and your wild musical ability. I hope that you do join us again. If people want to find out more about you, where can they do that?
I'd say Facebook's the easiest way. I'm all over Facebook these days. It's become the primary interaction point.
Under RJ Howson?
Yeah, my last name was Howson.
Okay.
Howson, how you gonna get it done?
Oh, well, would you, so I'll post this on, it'll be on crystalkubis.com. If you checking out this interview on YouTube, feel free to go on there, because by then we might have another interview up of you whenever people are going to catch this. So thank you very much. If you have any questions out there for RJ, feel free to write in under the video, and we'll or for me, anything we're talking about here, any way that either one of us can assist you, please let us know. And would you be willing to take us out with some more music?
Sure, why not?
All right, thank you.